Welcome to First Dates and Soulmates, the podcast that is here to ask the hard-hitting questions like, is this love or just a wildly inappropriate use of office hours? I am Nikki McKnight.
And I'm Meg Casebolt.
And on today's episode, it's 69!
Okay, so when I lived in Philadelphia, we used to go to gay bingo, which is when you would have drag queens on roller skates who were calling themselves bingo verifying divas or BVDs.
Okay.
And
I love
anytime that you called bingo, they would come over to verify on their roller skates. It was so much fun. But there was a rule that anytime during bingo that 069 was called, you would have to stand up and throw your arms in the air and go, oh, 69. So I just want to do that every time that this episode comes up.
I love that. I love that for us. Yes, it is our 69th episode. And what better way to commemorate that with the trope that I have very complicated, in-depth feelings about. Y'all, we are talking student, professor, student, teacher romance today.
I cannot believe that you agreed to an entire episode that we discovered about this time last year as part of our, what was it? Tropes we hate, books we love theme.
Yeah.
This was the trope you hated. And then we talked about September and sort of doing back to school. And you're like, you know what I'm going to do is revisit that trope that I hate.
Because here's the thing I've discovered, and I think you noticed it a couple weeks ago on one of the shows that I was like, oh, I like this one. And you're like, it's workplace romance. You don't like workplace. I'm like, oh my God, you're right. So here's what I've discovered. There are certain tropes, as standalone tropes, I do not like because the way that you put it was, I don't read tropes, I read authors. And I found that to be extremely accurate because when I started going through my list of books in this trope that I've read and I'll say enjoyed for the most part, I was like, oh, they're all authors I like. Like, this is a trope that I'm usually not going to risk on an author I haven't read before because there are really complicated feelings I have about it. But that's what we're going to get into today. So I guess, Meg, what are your general thoughts? It grosses me out to say teacher-student. So I'm going to say professor-student because that implies they're older. So, yeah, because that's one of my things. Meg, what are your thoughts on professor-student romance?
Similar to you, it is not something that I would seek out as a way to enter an author's oeuvre, but it's something that I sort of stumble upon sometimes, and I don't always love it, even with an author that I trust and respect, just because I have the feelings about power dynamics. And I think when you and I have had this conversation previously, even when you're saying like, oh, I'm shipping this book about workplace or I'm shipping this book about whatever, it's not even workplace that I think you would dislike, even though there's some of that. I think it's a power dynamic of boss secretary, or there's an age gap, there's a class gap, there's a wealth gap, there's some sort of conflict that is a power dynamic that it can be done well in a way that addresses said power dynamic, but it can also be done in a way that is manipulative and non-consensual. And so I think that's the thing that probably makes us feel squicky is it's not, oh, this premise is gross, although sometimes the premise is gross. It's the way that it's played out that gives you the opportunity to decide whether or not it makes you squick.
Yeah, and I think another large part of the reason why this trope can sometimes be challenging, for me at least as a reader, is the threat of discovery, which is one of the reasons I don't like queer sports romance all that much, because I feel like there's always this underlying current of people can't find out. We have to hide. So then we spend the entire story wondering, is this when they get caught? Is this when they get found out? Is this when someone betrays the characters and is going to out them? I feel like that can also exist in this type of trope, because even if the story makes it as consensual as it could possibly be, there is also like that threat of discovery and what is going to happen and what are people's opinions going to be about those characters. I'm a people pleaser. I don't like it when people get angry at me. So I feel like this type of book, when you're waiting for like a dean or a fellow student, or like even the scene in Legally Blonde when Victor Garber's character hits on Reese Witherspoon's Elle character and Selma Blair sees it, Vivian sees it. She's like, oh, I knew all along. Like the attitude is just so shitty. Even if like Elle was not at fault, it was totally Callahan being a creep. Like there's always that undercurrent for me in student professor that makes it just like, you can't relax into it for me. because there's always like a threat of discovery, and that just makes me really uncomfortable.
Really uncomfortable, or a threat of accusation, right?
Yeah.
That
Mm-hmm.
there is a manipulation of power. I have
Mm-hmm.
a friend who's a lecturer in
Mm-hmm.
mechanical engineering. So
Mm-hmm.
she's a woman in a very male dominated environment, and she is the one with the position of power because she's teaching undergrads, grad
Mm-hmm.
students, and
Mm-hmm.
she's like, I can't close my door ever.
Mm-hmm.
Ever,
Mm-hmm.
ever. My door,
Yep.
I want them to just take the door off the hinges so that I
Mm-hmm.
never have to worry about that, because
Mm-hmm.
even though she's the woman, she still has these power dynamics that are at play. And she knows
Mm-hmm.
that, and I'm sure we can talk about Ellie Hazelwood and her younger
Mm-hmm.
characters and the older
Mm-hmm.
people that she's dealing with in the power roles. But there's always going to be some sort of struggle there of
Mm-hmm.
what's actually happening during office hours, to the point from
Yeah.
your intro.
Um, that just made me, and there are sometimes they can do it so well in a way that is like, it feels like it doesn't feel gross. It feels like it's a romance, like you utterly believe in what is happening. And then it becomes a dynamic that they're comfortable playing with. Like, this is not at all the same, but I was thinking about Onley James's Psycho, when you have August and Lucas. And at the very end of that book, spoiler, if it's not a huge spoiler for that book if you haven't read it, but August is in his office at the university and he sees he has a student meeting, and in walks Lucas with like glasses on being like, hello, professor. And then they just have sexy times in their office. I'm like, this is a good use of office hours. This is fine because they're both professors and they're in a relationship.
They did meet there, but they are not reporting to each other at any point. They
No,
are in different
no,
departments. They both work on
exactly.
campus, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
They do not
And
need
it's
to
great.
report themselves to HR, but maybe they do anyway, just to
Yeah.
be safe.
Exactly. So I wanted to talk through this trope in a couple of different ways. One, to kind of look at like what about it makes us uncomfortable, but also what about it do people really like? Because this is a popular trope. People do like this. And then kind of just look into what are the certain scenarios, dynamics that make it good or make it bad. And again, I would just like to acknowledge, like what you like, as long as it does not involve minors or non-consenting people, do like what you like. I'm not here to yuck anybody's yum. We're gonna talk about it though. We're gonna talk about it. So the first thing is one that we've already kind of brought up. It's this idea of like power, it's age, it's authority. Because we often think of the teacher, the professor being in that position of power, whether it's because of their age or their experience, or institutional power. They are at the university. They grade you. They have control of things. But there are also plenty of stories where the teacher's like, and it's the student that is like the pursuer. Um, and I think this really starts to play with ideas of consent, not only between individuals, but within the institution itself. Because we first brought this up when we talked about Kissing Tolstoy by Penny Reid. And one of the reasons I said I liked it was because they both had really mature conversations with the institution. The professor in that one goes to like the dean of his department and is like, I'm interested in pursuing something with this student. I want to make sure that's okay. So someone else needs to be in charge of her grades before she's agreed to the relationship, which is a lot, but it started in a good place.
They both had good conversations with the institution. They did not speak to each
No,
other. That was
they
my
did not.
biggest issue with that, is he was
No.
like, I'll just go apply for all these grants and not tell you what I'm doing until it's finally come through. And it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
you can say that you want to pursue this to your dean, but you're not actually talking to your girlfriend. Weird.
No. No,
Hmm.
especially since they weren't even really together at that point. It's almost like I want to make sure it's okay before we even decide if it's something we're gonna do, because then we don't
Yeah.
have to worry about it after. Like, that's great. And I see that come up a lot in certain stories. The author will write it that, oh well, they're the professor is not a professor to that student. Like maybe they're at the same campus, but if the professor of engineering and the person's not an engineering student, they're in a completely different department. Well, does that make it okay? Because there's not that grading relationship. So it made me think, is the only aspect of the power dynamics that is weird is this grading aspect? Like, do you think that is kind of like the
No.
big thing?
I think maybe for teacher student, not a professor, not a
Mm-hmm.
professor dean, because I think
Mm-hmm.
that can add new pieces about,
Mm-hmm.
promotions and things along those
Mm-hmm.
lines. Grading is part of it, but it's also a whole
Mm-hmm.
suite of the power dynamics of not only
Mm-hmm.
is that person in charge of your grade for that one class, but they could be an advisor on your thesis. They could
Mm-hmm.
have pull around the department on your behalf.
Mm-hmm.
If you break up or something bad happens, then they could badmouth you in some way to other members
Mm-hmm.
of your department. And I think also there's the question of preferential treatment. Are you getting
Yeah.
more access to lab supplies because you're sleeping
Mm-hmm.
with somebody? So I think that
Mm-hmm.
grading is probably the biggest power dynamic there, but
Mm-hmm.
there are certainly other things that are happening. And I would say that that's at like a teacher student level, but I'm sure at the
Mm-hmm.
professor or professor dean level, it would also
Yeah.
be promotion and advancement
Yeah.
within the field.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that came up with Love Hypothesis was that there was that kind of undercurrent of access to lab, access to materials. I'll say advice or like mentoring, like are you getting more or less because you have something else? And then it brought up for me, I always just remember, I think it's what's that Adam Sandler movie where there's like they have to do like the game show at the end because he's about to inherit a bunch of stuff. It's like a really famous 90s Adam Sandler movie. It's got
Billy
Bradley
Elliot?
Whit.
Nope. Billy Elliot is the
Yeah,
one about the dancer. Billy Madison.
Billy Madison. There you go. He's a ballet dancer. Adam Sandler's ballet. No, but yeah, Billy
Oh my God.
Madison.
Please no. Yeah. Billy
Yeah, no,
Madison.
because they have like the big thing, the game show thing at the end to see if he's learned enough in school to like inherit or whatever. I don't really remember the movie, but I think it's Bradley Whitford, and he gets the question about business ethics, and the whole joke is this bad dude doesn't really know what ethics are, and then he fails, and yay, Billy Madison wins. I guess good for him. And it brought up this thing for me that even if the author has set up a situation where this relationship is quote unquote legal, as in the university doesn't have specific policies against it, or they are in a situation where they're not in like a direct reporting, grading relationship. So technically it's like not illegal. Is it still ethical?
Hmm.
And that I feel like is such like a case by case basis. And I think it definitely helps when you have like dual POV because you do get both characters' perspective on it. I feel like that's a little bit comforting, where sometimes if it's single POV, then it's like there's still you don't know what the other character is thinking. You know what that character is saying to the POV character, but you don't know what their internal thoughts are. And then that made me wonder, with these types of books, is it better to be dual POV? Or if it is single POV, do you want to be inside the student's head or do you want to be inside the professor's head?
I think almost always we are in the student's head. I think that often with single POV, and I'm not saying always, but often with single POV, you are in the head of the person who is in the more vulnerable position. You are in the
Mm,
head of the person who has more to lose. And I think that authors often set it up that way intentionally because it raises the stakes and it raises the
mm-hmm,
conflict to say this person doesn't know. They sort of have to take this leap of faith. And
mm-hmm,
if you're going along with them, then you're sort of on the rails a little bit more. But it certainly is less comfortable to read when you are
mm-hmm,
the person who is in the more vulnerable position or the lower side of the class dynamic.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for the most part, when I actually pay attention, I'm pretty sure I read mostly dual POV.
One of the things I've noticed, and I would love if people have suggestions or reflections about this or recommendations about this. One of the things that I've noticed, not universally but frequently, is that typically single POV is, if we're in an MF book, it's the woman's perspective is the single POV,
Mm-hmm,
and then often in that case it's the woman who is also in the more vulnerable position, which is typically the case because women are typically the more vulnerable member of a hetero
mm-hmm,
couple. But
mm-hmm,
I know you read a lot of queer, and in
mm-hmm.
queer I very rarely see single POV. It's almost
Almost
always
always dual.
dual, except when you have a strong power dynamic like this. So right now
Mm-hmm.
I'm reading Rule Breaker by, is it Lily Main or is it Morton? I'm like literally in the middle of
It's
it.
Lily
Yeah,
Morton.
there
Lily
we go.
Morton.
Lily Main. Lily Main monsters,
Monstrous.
Lily Morton
Yeah.
gays.
Yeah. Well, technically the monsters are gay.
They're
But
all gay too.
they're
But okay,
supernatural
so
gay.
currently I'm reading A Rule Breaker by Lily Morton, and that is single POV, which I think is very rare in the MM space because typically you get both sides of it.
Yeah,
But
is
it's
that
another one of
Gabe's
those
book?
that's Gabe's book. So Gabe is
It's Gabe's book.
so emotionally closed off
Mm-hmm.
that you only get Dylan's point of view. And so
Yeah.
I am ready to throw this book against the wall and DNF it because I can't stand Gabe that much. But that's what if you had Gabe's POV and you knew how much he was pining for Dylan, then it wouldn't work well as a book, right? So that's
No.
the only time that you see those single POV MMs is when there is this huge power dynamic. In this case, it's boss employee, it's boss
Yeah.
assistant.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, I would say 90% of MMs that I read are dual POV.
Yeah, me too. And I think it's interesting. Like, I do believe, actually, I don't know, I don't think this is a spoiler. I believe the final chapter of the book is Gabe.
I don't mind when people do that, but I also feel like it's a little bit of fan service and a little bit of like, oh, I loved him all along.
Yeah, because I think part of it is, the inner turmoil between them. Because I can't think of any books that I've read. Again, I'm sure they exist. They're just a little bit probably more taboo or darker than I would read personally. Is that in most of the ones I read, it's either a dual pursuit of each other or it's the not professor pursuing and saying, no, I want this. For me, it is rare to have it be the professor who is the one who's fully pursuing the other and like who's way more invested in it.
I do want to close the loop, which is that I just leaped forward and the epilogue is 89%, and that is from the other character's perspective. And I do see this a lot in single POV. I think about like BK Borison does this in her books. And even like one of the A Court of Thorn and Roses book, the middle one, Court of Mist and Fire. I know you haven't read it, but that one, literally the entire series is in Feyre's perspective, except one chapter in Rhysand's that like sort of closes off the end of book 2 to be like, oh, I trust her. And that's pretty much all that it is. And I'm like, why did we need this? But I do think sometimes that it can be helpful in an epilogue capacity, but it also can be a little bit of like, you could have done the subtext work in the book. Is that shitty of me to say?
No, I feel like it all comes down to preference, right? I think sometimes it's done well, sometimes it's not done so well. Like,
yeah, and it comes, and that's what we're saying here too. Is this trope is not necessarily our favorite, but sometimes authors can handle it really well. So it's not that, oh, I hate all single POVs or I hate all teacher student. It's like, what is the author doing with it?
Yeah. Yeah. So this gets me into kind of this next theme I want to explore is this idea of like, I'll call it fantasy. So why is this trope here? And do I think our thoughts on this trope have evolved over time? Yes, absolutely. When it comes to like consent and power dynamics, I feel like in the world of Me Too and everything else, this is just something people are probably a little bit more hyper aware of in these types of relationships. Like in last week's episode, we were talking about 1950s. I was like, where's the consent? She's getting injected against her will. He's like giving her a shit ton of vodka. This is not a good situation. But it's like, why does this endure? And I realize that it does play into a fantasy aspect of you're the special one. A person who is so much smarter than you thinks you're special, wants to spend time on you, wants to put energy on you. And when I just say it like that, it sounds creepy as fuck.
You're the specialist boy.
You're the specialist
boy.
But there's something like you're getting attention. You're the special one. For the character, like the student person, it's like I'm the special one, but I'm getting the attention. They think I'm worthy of attention. Like that's how I think if you're just talking about the trope outside of specific books, that's typically like the fantasy of it is just like I get to do like, oh, specialist boy, I'm getting the recognition. I'm sure it has something to do with daddy issues. But
and I bet when this was first being written, you know, in the 70s, in the 80s, especially most of that would have been MF. It was probably like really beautiful, young, wide-eyed, innocent girls. And then the older kind of storied professor who knows everything. And she catches his eye. And like, yeah, honestly, it kind of feels that way too, where he's like, he's 49 and she's 30 pretty, but like move it down even more. But that sort of vibe of like she's wide-eyed and innocent and she brings him to life and he is so cultured and there's probably a lot of like weird shit going on then. But I'm so glad that we started this podcast in the post Me Too movement where we can have this conversation and have this like normalized language around, oh, these power dynamics and these intersectional problems and the consent issues and the ethical solutions and the, you know, when do we need to get HR involved in this and who's grading whom. And I love this, but I think that now the exceptionalism of it is intellectual. I mean, yes, the student is still typically very good looking because everyone in a romance novel is good looking. But there's also this sense of that's my smartest student, or that's the one who, oh wow, she's actually studying science, but then she's just fluent in Russian to do Russian literature at a high level, and she's read all of this, and she's just so academically gifted. And you know, Olive and the Love Hypothesis. I'm using books we've already talked about for all of our listeners who have binged the entire catalog. But, you know, Olive shows up and she's incredibly talented and her work on pancreatic cancer is groundbreaking, but she's just insecure about it. And Adam sees that not only is she beautiful, but she's also got this beautiful heart and she's very academically gifted. And, you know, like they have to be more well-rounded humans now than they would have had to be 20 years ago, which I like.
I'm wondering if that's like an MF versus MM like feature, that the women are in some way exceptional and that's part of the attraction. Because I was thinking in just some of the MM books that I was thinking about, you know, Disciplinary Action by Onley James is one, Just a Little Bit Twisted by Alessandra Hazard. Like that is, or even in Dream a Little Dream. I think that's like C.F. White's, like the psycho serial killer series I talked about a couple episodes ago. Like the student isn't really academically gifted. They might have moments, but it's their situation that is intriguing. So in Disciplinary Action by Onley James, which is like, it's pretty smutty. It's as like I would not call
it's
that.
Onley James. It has to be.
Yeah, but it's basically it's like student headmaster. And like the student is diabetic and can't afford medication, needs grades. So I haven't read the book in a very long time, so I don't remember the exact way of the inciting incident, but it's something like, hey, you can have me if you help me get my grades and do all this. So it kind of, he takes care of them, and it's a very, very sexual relationship. Or Just a Little Bit Twisted by Alessandra Hazard. If I remember that one correctly, it's you have a student who is like on scholarship and he's trying to take care of all of his siblings after his parents died or they went away. I can't quite remember, but he becomes desperate enough to go to the professor and says like, if you fuck me, I'll let you fuck me if you let me keep my scholarship and like give me good grades. Otherwise I will tell people that you tried to come on to me. So it's like both of those stories don't start from what I would call equal footing. But of course it's a romance, so it's happy and they fall in love and it's great. It's happy. But that the students in those books aren't like, they're not coming from a place of gifted. They're really coming from a place of lack and desperation, which can sometimes be a weird place to start from. So, and that kind of brings me to like another part of this, which is like the gender dynamics involved in this, right? When we think female student, male teacher, it's often like romanticized, or if it's male student, female teacher, it's often criminalized. Ooh. And the thing that really came to mind for me was obviously Mary Kay Letourneau, which, you know, Mary Kay Letourneau was a teacher who had a relationship with a 12-year-old student. Like I hesitate to even say relationship. Like it's not a relationship. She went to prison for this, and then married him when he turned 18. And I believe they had children, but I also believe they are now divorced. But like when you talk about like male student, female teacher, Mary Kay Letourneau is what comes up, to the point they even made fun of this in the Adam Sandler, Andy Samberg movie, That's My Boy. At the very beginning, like Adam Sandler's character is having sex with his teacher and she gets pregnant and goes to jail. And that child later is Andy Samberg. And Adam Sandler's character gets really famous from this. Like he's the student who like, I don't want to even say had sex or had a relationship with, because it's not. It's like he was assaulted by his teacher. But like it's kind of made fun of in that way. Like, oh, bro, you so lucky. You got the hot teacher. And those of us watching are just like, this is so bad. He's a child. This is so bad.
Yeah.
This is so bad. Which is honestly why I don't even really want to talk about high school. I'm like, even at 18, that still makes me feel bad. Below 18, I'm like, I'm not having that conversation. They are not of age. No.
I have some past timeline chapters in Kate's novel because they meet when she's 16 and he's 19. And I am very specific about, like, we're in Nick's perspective going, she's too young. She's too young. Nope, you can't. Nope, 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 nope. And then when she turns 18 or 19, they have this conversation that's like, okay, now we can be in a space of consent, because I know that it makes me squicky. Like, at one point I wrote them kissing when she was 17 and I'm like, I don't even want that. I don't even want, like, even though it's consensual and he's like semi the same age and it's not sex, I'm still like, blah, blah, blah. But to your point, you know, where there is this feeling of predatoriness and criminality, it's got me thinking about My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, which was not a romance. It was a dark academia book. It was a contemporary fiction book about a 15-year-old girl who was in a consensual relationship with her high school teacher who was 42. And then years later, he is accused of being inappropriate with his students, and he like calls her to do like a character witness, essentially, if I'm recalling this correctly. And then she has this sort of like, should I do this? Because I was underage and in a relationship with him, but it was consensual. It was inappropriate, but it wasn't forced upon me. And then as you go through the book, you realize just how much he was grooming her and manipulating her. And it's like, it made me feel so squicky. And I hated it, but it was well written, but it's that feeling of why this genre can be so problematic, is that if you have a young, naive, sort of ingenue character who is exceptional in some way and catches the attention of the older man, then can he fuck with her psychologically?
Yeah, and it brings up this question of like, when is it okay to enjoy problematic tropes? Because I do think there is still like an escapism in here. It is fantasy. These are not real people. So, you know, I look at some of the books I've mentioned, and in some of them, you know, it's definitely, you know, skirting the line. I believe in Disciplinary Action, the student is young. I don't remember if he's under 18 or not. I sure to God hope he's 18, but I do not remember offhand. But like, they're enjoyable. So it just makes me wonder, when we read those, is it kind of like, are we thinking that it's kind of a role play situation where it's like, this is not a real situation. These are not real people. They're fine. It's fine. Everything's fine. It's fiction. It ends up well. So does that make it easier for us to consume problematic tropes? Or am I just like the logistical queen that I'm like, before these relationships start, there must be a signed consensual agreement about what they are and are allowed not to do. Their grades must be taken care of. Like I don't want to overthink it too much, because sometimes smut is just smut, and smut is great.
Well, I think also, like, we talked about this 68 episodes ago, since now we're in episode 69.
69!
Like, why do we read romance? Why specifically romance? And it's because we feel safe in romance. We know that at the end of the day, it will end with a happy ending. At the end of the day, when we get to the end, we have an expectation that, you know, it's almost like we can bear more because we know that it's going to work out, versus with literary fiction, it can end any way they want it to, and it's uncomfortable. My editor, Sydney, who we had on as a guest, recommended a book to me called Luster by Raven Leilani. It's not in this genre at all, but it's gritty. It's gritty, and she is displaced from her home, and she's abused in her relationships, and the writing is fucking gorgeous. And that's why they made this recommendation to me, is like, look at the way that this author uses sentence structure. Look at the way that this author structures their sequencing. Like, it was a craft recommendation, but I have to keep putting it down because the topic is so uncomfortable to me. It's her, you know, being the mistress to a married couple, and meeting the wife and needing to parse that out, and being a Black woman in New York City and dealing with the racism, and it's very emotionally draining to me. And so I can't read more than 15 pages at a time because it just tears me apart a little bit. And I think books like that can be important to read to get that different viewpoint, to not have everything be rose-colored glasses. But fuck it, because we are romance readers.
Right?
We want things to work out. We're here because we want the goddamn cupcakes.
We want the cupcakes. No, but this
we want
makes
the
so much
069 episode. We want the
there
cupcakes.
There you go. No, I think you're so right. It comes back to as well, like, do I believe the intent of the author? Because if the authors created a situation where like, no, it's totally fine, but I don't believe them, I'm like, no, this is not fine. Like, your characters are not fine. This is not fine. This is not good. This might be super smutty, but I cannot think about it outside of that because there's just too much going on that I don't believe you, author, as you write this. But and that's where I think definitely dual POV helps. You get to see both perspectives really early on, that you're not waiting for the big confrontation or the big reveal at the end, and then they have to kind of like settle themselves and be like, no, we are going to continue doing this. At least with dual POV, you can see from early on what the intent is from both characters, to be like, I do just am attracted to this person regardless of our situation, versus like twiddling their evil thumbs. Like, I don't want to read that. No, thank you. And even if it starts that way, it's not necessarily where I want to end up. So again, that's why I really like let's see inside their heads. Because there's something I think too about like gifted students or like exceptionalism being recognized by this wise figure that is also kind of creepy. Like, it just reminds me of like serial killers in a way, that they're like, oh yes, like, or what's that Ashley Judd Morgan Freeman movie, Kiss the Girls, with Casanova, and he kidnaps all the women that, this is just what's so dark. Like, she's an exceptional violin player. She's an exceptional surgeon. That this collecting of exceptionalism can also get kind of creepy. But in many stories that we've read, at least, that exceptionalism, all it's doing is allowing them to connect on the same level intellectually. So like, that doesn't sound as bad. Like, calm down.
Yeah, but I do love your question of like, how does this show up differently in a hetero versus a queer dynamic? Because as soon as you go queer, you have that level of marginalization. You have that level of being a little bit on the outskirts, and potentially outing yourself by being in that relationship could impact even the person who's in the higher side of the power dynamic. It could impact them in a greater way just by being gay.
Yeah, there's almost like that extra bit with professors, it seems, in the books that I've read, that there is the extra layer of, if their relationship is found out, it's almost like there's just this implicit thing of like, okay, well, clearly gay teachers, gay camp counselors, whatever, they must be like on the prowl, and it's creepy and it's bad. That's like an extra layer for if they were to get discovered, that it's like, oh, they're one of those bad, creepy gays. We're like, oh, God, for the fucking Christ. Like, not
especially,
so much, thank you.
Yeah, especially if it's a younger person that they're with. It's like, oh, is this why you went into teaching? Which is gross. It's
so gross. It's so gross. No, but like, it even makes me think of like, when does popular culture try to make it okay when it is very clearly not okay? And it's Pretty Little Liars. Which I have not watched. It's not my type of show. But I know about Ezra and Arya. And like, for those of you who haven't seen it, Ezra is a teacher at this school and Arya is a student, but they meet in a bar beforehand, and he just assumes she's in college. And then she goes to school, like, I think it's when summer vacation is over or whatever, and Ezra's her teacher, and they start a relationship, and it turns out, with the whole plot line of Pretty Little Liars, he knows things and whatever. Again, I've never watched it, but a podcast I listened to, one of the co-hosts formerly was an entertainment reporter. And she was sent to interview Pretty Little Liars about like one of the seasons. And she wanted to talk about this relationship. She wanted to get Lucy Hale's opinion on this relationship. Well, when she goes into the press room, Lucy Hale's not there. It's just all the other Pretty Little Liars. And she asked some of the other reporters, like, was Lucy in there? And they're like, yeah. So she's like, I don't know if this is true, but I think they were hiding her from me so that she didn't have to ask this question.
Interesting.
Yeah. Who knows? But I think it's like, I do think it's interesting. Like, and I do think it comes back to, what is the plot? What is the setup? I think sometimes in like the more erotic side or the smutty side, it's we've talked about this sometimes with novellas. It's like the situation doesn't really matter. Like the setup doesn't really matter. It's more just like, what is this action in time? So I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes for some of the more porny versions of this, like it doesn't really matter that it's teacher and student. That's just set dressing. Like we're not, we don't care. It's more like we want to put them together in a situation and have them bone. Have a great day. And we're like,
Yeah.
cool. That's what we went to that book for.
Yeah. And I think that's to a great extent, it's like how much of the book is examining the power dynamic, how much of it
Mm-hmm.
is trying to subjugate's not the right word. What's the word I'm looking for?
Interrogate.
Yeah, sure, we'll go with that. Like, is this trying to interrogate the problem or is it just glamorizing the problem? You know,
Mm.
is this romanticizing a power dynamic because the girl gets everything she ever wanted from the older
Mm.
guy?
Ugh.
Or is this going, eek, what's wrong here and how can we fix the system? Or what can we do within the system that feels good? And I think that that can also lead to either the squick or unsquick moment of
Mm.
are they discussing this or are they glossing over this or are they enjoying, is this sort of like a
Mm-hmm.
taboo that they're playing with,
Mm.
at which point there is a time and a place for it, to your point about like, okay, maybe it's just the set deck, maybe it's, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the ways that they're using office hours and getting away with it can be kind
Mm-hmm.
of like hot in a forbidden way.
Mm-hmm.
But is there ever a point where it can be subversive? That's the word I was
Ooh.
looking for. Are they
Ooh.
subverting the trope in some way, or are they
Mm-hmm.
just repeating and churning out what has already been done?
Yeah. Something just came from me. I'm like, also, are we just thinking too hard about this? Like, I know that's the point of our show, and we like to talk about this stuff because we're both very smart, educated people who have been through therapy. But
We we are specialist girls.
we are specialist girls. We're specialist girls. But sometimes I wonder, I'm like, it's also okay to just say, it's hot. I
Yeah,
don't particularly care about the plot. But then
if
sometimes
that's
like, I
the
still get the story in
choice,
my brain and be like, okay,
right?
are we
When
thinking
you were
too
like,
hard?
Onley James as this problematic setup, and I'm like, I'm still gonna read the shit out of that book because I
Honestly,
trust the author.
it's really hot. I've talked about the To Love a Psycho series by C.F. White because Dream a Little Dream is the first book in it, and that's essentially there is a professor at this university who also worked as like a criminal psychologist for like the FBI or law enforcement or whatever, and he helped track down these serial killers, and these serial killers had this son who was like put into foster care, was given a secret name so that people wouldn't know that he was the son of these notorious serial killers. Well, then that student goes to his school. And they start a relationship, and it's very dramatic. And so much of I think it's 3 books. It's a really great series, but so much of that is the professor going, "We can't do this. You are a student. I know about your situation. I know who you are. We need to separate for a time until you are out of school, you're old, like whatever happens." Of course, the student is pushing back on this, and part of his narrative is like, I had the most horrific childhood ever. Like, I want something good in my life because so much of my life isn't good, and I see you as good. It's a fantastic series if you can do something. It's like a little bit of Criminal Minds type of thing in it. But there is like that push-pull dynamic that I really enjoy because it also shows up in Nora Phoenix has the Foster Brothers series. I think that's the name of the series. They're all Foster Brothers. The Foster Brothers. And book 3 is called Loathed by Lagan. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Lagan is one of the brothers, and he's a law student, and his professor is a dick because he sees Lagan like not working hard, just being fully satisfied with getting C pluses, and just thinks he's like fucking around, not serious, not worth it. And Lagan is like, hey, I don't have money. I work multiple jobs. I'm supporting my other brothers because they supported me. So I don't care if I get A's. I just want to pass and get a job. And his professor, Killian, is like, no, you need to be exceptional. He goes, why do I need to be exceptional? Who cares? In the real world, does it matter if I get an A or I get a C? I'm passing. I'm going to be a lawyer. And then a bunch of, stuff happens. Obviously, they end up in a relationship and they comfort each other. Turns out Killian comes from a very similar like foster background, and they kind of bond over that. But it's very much like, I liked their dynamic because it was very much like Lagan going, fuck you and your like pretentious attitude. And the professor's like, fuck you and your laziness and like your laissez-faire attitude. And they're just like clashing. It's great. The ending is fabulous. But I also like that type of tension where you could take that relationship and put it in any type of setting and it would still be great. But having it be, going back to this idea of like academic exceptionalism, the student's like, fuck no, I don't want your exceptionalism. I don't need to be exceptional. I need to put food on the table. I need to have a place to live. Especially by the third book. I think in the first book, one of his other foster brothers is like married to a billionaire. And is like the billionaire, I think his name is Sebastian, is like starting to take care of the brothers, but the brothers are also like, no, like we are going to be independent. So like there's such a great subtext to his relationship if you've read the other books. But I also just like when a professor is like, oh, I don't like that he's not afraid of me. Interesting. Like he doesn't fear me and my largesse.
Was that the book that you're shipping this week? You just like
It wasn't, but I recommend. I'm going to put all of these books that I've actually read and liked. I'm going to put them in the show notes.
All right, so
Nikki's brand of approved ones.
If you want to get the list of Nikki approved teacher students that are slightly lower on the squick scale, I'm not going to say off the squick scale because I'm sure there's still a certain amount of squick, but like low squick, low angst, low squick. Definitely head over to firstdateandsoulmates.substack.com. You can see our show notes, which Nikki does an incredible job pulling together. You can get the whole list right there and leave us some notes and comments right there on our Substack about what it is that you're reading, what you think might be books that we might enjoy in this space, maybe some that are a bit more subversive, some that are maybe MFs that don't have girls that are the super smart, exceptional girls, but just like normal humans would be kind of a nice touch here. Nikki, anything else that you want to add to this genre trope deep dive?
So I would just finish off by saying, like, read what you love. Just, be thoughtful with it. Like with most information, I think it's important to kind of look at, like, enjoy it. Love what you love. Get off to it. Do whatever you want. But also, like, when you can, just think about it, because you can enjoy things and just be aware of what's different. And I think we see this a lot when we look at older media. Like when we talked about The Prince and the Showgirl last week, we're like, okay, there's some problematic shit happening here, but also there's moments to enjoy. And both of these things can happen simultaneously. Just be conscious media consumers, and then get off to whatever you want to get off to. Have a great time. I support you in this. Nikki approved. Thumbs up.
All right, speaking of getting off, I am ready to talk about what I'm shipping this week because I got a migraine last month, and when I get migraines, screens are tough if they're backlit. So I spent a lot of time in bed reading a Kindle. I read an entire romantasy book in a day.
Nice.
Because that was all I could do. So I don't know if you know Dusty. You know Dusty?
Yes, I do. I do know Dusty. I was chatting with her over email the other day because she wrote a very scathing client
that one about quitting.
Reply.
I love that one. Oh my God.
Y'all, I would just, this is a total sidebar, Meg, I'm taking you off. But I admire so much people that can write these beautiful takedown, boundary enforcing emails. Dusty, I applaud you because, girl, God damn, that was a good one. I wrote back and I was like, I want to save this and like put it in my inspiration file for when I need to tell people to fuck off. I'm going to reference that email. I'm so sorry. Please continue.
It's okay. You can just call it the fuck off file.
That's the fuck off file. Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. I'm emailing Dusty about this. Dusty, we're creating a fuck off swipe file for when you need to tell people they're being assholes or you need to quit or call people on their shit. We're going to call it the fucking swipe file. I like it.
Love it.
I like it a lot.
So when I published Peppermint Bark, Dusty was like, okay, love this book. I want to bring it to my book club, which is run by a woman named Mary Williams, who runs the book club called the Feral Book Club in Portland, Oregon. It is all people who own their own businesses. They get together once a month to read just like hardcore smut. And they're not allowed to talk about their businesses at all, ever. That's the rule. They all own businesses and they cannot network for a minute. And so Dusty was like, you need to know Mary. And I'm like, okay, Mary, give me a rundown. So Mary is the one who has the recommendation for us of our produce-based smut that I'm hoping to use for our unhinged November food episode. But another one that Mary recommended to me is The Kiss of the Basilisk by Lindsay Straub. It is romantasy. It is... you know how romantasy sort of has like, I am of medieval times, but also no time at all. So it's that sort of time space. She lives in a village. Her name is it's something stupid. Tem. Her name is Tem for temperance. It's a
Okay.
dominating. Um,
Okay.
but her village has a prince who, every time that a prince is born, they take all of the girls who were born the same year as the prince and they have them get trained by the basilisks who live just outside the village, and they are sex teachers. And so all 13 girls who are of the same age as the prince get trotted out to have sex with the basilisks, to have their little sex education lessons. And then
It ties in with the theme.
there you go. And then they go into the castle and they have almost like a bachelor type elimination round of, and everyone's on board with this, where it's like, okay, let's just teach our girls to be as slutty as possible, and then we'll send them into the prince and he can have sex with all of them to decide which one of them he wants to be the queen. And then he starts eliminating them, and the top 3 end up moving in with him, so he, and it's just like, it's so insane. Because not only is it like, oh, let's go just teach sex to this, only every 20 years does this happen when new princes are born, so they're the only ones who get this basilisk sex training. And the basilisks are like the most sex positive people, which I'm totally in favor of, but
Okay.
also like, then she ends up infiltrating the basilisk underground lair and discovers that actually they don't always turn people into stone. And of course it just goes into this ridiculous romantasy, perfect for migraine, smut loving, just orgy filled everything. So if
I
you
love
want
it.
something that is romantasy, love triangle between a human prince and a snake prince, and the exceptional girl that's always in every romantasy, where she starts as a farm girl and ends up being the most powerful human on the planet. Like all the romantasy tropes you want, then go check out The Kiss of the Basilisk by Lindsay Straub.
I feel like I would love for us to do an episode on that kind of like romantasy, exceptional female character trope, because it's so popular in that genre and I don't read enough of it. And now I'm just real fascinated to see how it
It's
fits
like she
in.
has to start, it's like full rags to riches. Like she has to start
Yeah.
literally starving, no money, no meat on her bones. Her family left her behind. Like she has
Mm-hmm.
nothing. She's completely normal. And then by the end of the series, whether this was only a one book, but by the end of A Court of Thorn and Roses, by the end of Crown of blah blah blah, every one of them that I've read, she's,
Mm-hmm.
by the end of it, she's the most powerful human on the planet, and I like it. But I'm also sometimes like, do we have to start with her being like a mercenary whose mom just died and all she's doing is trying to survive life as an assassin, and then surprise, she's actually secretly a princess? I'm like,
Oh my God.
that's not this book, that's other books that I've read. But
Mm-hmm.
that and sort of like that, oh, I secretly had magic but my mom tied it up inside me, that sort of vibe. Oh, no one ever told me that I'm secretly part fae. So yeah, it fits
That's
all the tropes that you want from a romantasy.
that's so random. I love it.
All right,
I
so what
love
are you
it.
shipping this week, Miss Nikki?
Well, I had one thing, and then I was telling Meg about something I read over the last couple of days. She goes, "Is that a ship?" I'm like, "No, but I'll add it." So a
How
while
many
ago,
ships do you have? This is like your 8th ship of the episode.
I do a lot. I consume a lot.
I
No,
know.
so I have 2 official ones. Let's put it that way. So a while ago we did on the show 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake by Sarah McLean, and I really enjoyed that one. And then I read the follow up, the 10 something book. I was going to call it the 10 book. On my cloud library app, but they didn't have the final book, the 11 book, which was Juliana and the Duke. And I was like, oh, okay, I just won't read it. I'm kind of disappointed. I did want to read it, but I just so happened to log onto it the other day, and I was like, oh, it's there now. Fantastic. So I read it, liked it, and then the author's note at the end was like, hey, this is the next series. It's The Rule of Scoundrels, and the Duke's sister Georgiana is going to get her book, and I'm not going to spoil it, but there was a major spoiler in that end note that I was like, oh, it's kind of disappointing now. But my library had all 4 of those books on the library app, so I read all 4 of them, and it's about the 4 owners of the Fallen Angel, which is like the most notorious exclusive gaming hell in London, and the stories and things around it. And I thought it was great. There's some really good intrigue. There's some really good reveals. I love the female characters in them. And there's a couple characters they introduced in like the 3rd and 4th book of that series that are in the other book, which is the Something and Scoundrels series. It's the one that comes after it. I was like, oh, but my library doesn't have all of them right now. They only have one. And it's like a wait. So I've put it on a hold, but I kind of enjoy that. I don't read MF very often, and I don't often read historicals, but I just really liked Sarah McLean's work on that. I think she did a great job. But my initial ship was by Finn Walton. This was their debut novel, and it was called Assisting the Alpha. It is book 1 in the Soldati Security series. And I found this really interesting because I saw Alpha, and a lot of times when I see Alpha, I'm like, cool, it's probably shifters, but it might be Omegaverse, which is not my jam. And I read it, and it's like, no, this isn't that. So you have a world where you have like witches and shifters and all these species, and they do not get along. And there is like a quote unquote police force that like manages the city that are made up of these witches, and they're kind of racist and speciest, and we don't really like them. So you have the Soldati security group who is trying to get the contract to like take over the city stuff because they're made up of a bunch of different species, and they feel like they'll do a better job of it. But when they're doing the bidding, I think it's the mayor or someone in that office comes back and says, well, you need like a community liaison as a part of your bid. And they don't have one. Over in the witches, you have this character who is like the cousin to the leader of the coven. His magic doesn't really work that well. He's being made to work in like admin. And he keeps saying to his cousin who's in charge, like, I want to be an agent. And they keep testing him and his magic keeps fucking up. And eventually his family kind of like kicks him out. So he hooks up with the Soldati security guys and is like, I'm going to go in with you guys because this will prove to my family that I can do other things. And then of course they uncover vast conspiracies. Lots of secret stuff is happening. And it's just like a lot of really good drama. I love the magic system between them. I love the reveals of like who these characters actually are. It's just a very fun series with like really cool world building, really like hot characters. Like the dynamic between the two main characters is really, really fun. In terms of, you know, because when the witch character first comes in, I'm just looking up his name. I do not remember the character names. Ethan is the head of the security. Io is like the witch. So when Io applies for this job, well, Ethan's automatically like, well, he's a spy then, because it's his family that has the current contract to do all this, and all witches are bitches, really. Like they're rude, they think they're above everybody else, and Ethan's like this wolf shifter who brought together like a ragtag group of species after they left the military. And it's just them of like not trusting each other, but everybody else in the team really likes Io right away. And Ethan's like grumpy, grumpy, grumpy wolf. I wonder what could be happening when he gets really jealous of this witch and his things. Could it be that they are mates? Again, we as the reader know exactly what's going on. It's a very fun series. I'm really excited to read the next one. So Finn Walton, debut story. Highly recommend reading Assisting the Alpha, and be sure to follow them on all of their sites because we love supporting indie authors by subscribing to their newsletters, following them on social, recommending their books. Go forth and do all of those things. So that is all for us this week. Happy September. Happy back to school. Thank you for joining us on episode 69 of our show. A couple reminders. You can follow us on social media, YouTube, Instagram, and the TikTok at First Dates and Soulmates. Head on over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Substack. Subscribe, rate, leave us a review. It makes us feel all happy in our hearty bits. You're giving us a grade, and we really like only 5-star grades, please. Thank you very much. This is the power dynamic that we are entering into. Please be nice and consensual and give us those 5 stars. We like it. It helps, makes us feel good, and it helps other people find us. You can also comment on our Substack. You can comment on Spotify episodes, or you can email us at firstdatesandsoulmatespod@gmail.com. We always love to hear from you. And if you do have a little bit of money that you want to send our way to support all the work that we put into this show, 2 things you can do. You can check out our First Dates and Soulmates merch on tpublic.com. That link is there in the show notes. I think going back to school, you deserve a tote bag that says Justice for Operations Professionals. Everybody should own one. I do too. Or you can subscribe to the show on Substack. I believe it's $7 a month to support the show. And we would just greatly appreciate it. But the best thing you do is word of mouth. Tell folks to share with your friends who like podcasts, who like romance novels. You know, send them a link to the show. Tell them episode 69 is unhinged. Send them one of our past episodes. We love it all. And that is all for us this week. Coming up next week, we're still in the back to school mood, but we're going to be going a little bit out of the taboo and more into the overall love on campus. So we will see you then. Bye.